Hi, fabulous social studies students. As we've been talking about in class, we'll be doing a lot of inquiry this year, and a key skill in inquiry is questioning. One strategy that we're going to provide you with and that you'll be using all year long is Costa's questioning house. And this is a way of helping you think through the purpose for different questions and also helping you develop questions that will help you identify what you need to know more efficiently and also be able to really make sure you're answering the questions and finding the information that you need. So we're going to be watching a video here that gives you some more in-depth information about Costa's levels. You want to take notes on your own. The video will end up talking about Cornell notes. If you know how to take those and you want to, you may certainly do that. However, the video is going to give you some directions about having to use a certain type of Cornell notes in a certain color. You do not need to worry about that. The main thing is to listen to the information, take some notes about important things to remember about Costa's house and Costa's level of thinking and questioning. So without further ado, here is the video.
Questions, so many questions. In school, your day is filled with them. You show up to find the answers to all life's mysteries, and instead all you get hit with is question. Your teachers are always telling you that questions are important, that you have to ask questions if you want to learn it. But did you ever stop to think about what makes those questions so important in the first place? And how do you know what questions to ask? If you ask the wrong question, won't you get the wrong answer? And then how are you going to learn anything? There's a saying that goes, there's no such thing as a dumb question. While you may agree or disagree with that statement, one thing is for certain. All questions are not created equal. There are good questions, and there are not so good questions. The good questions are questions we can learn from to help us become better learners and better people. The bad questions, not so much.
But how do I know the good side from the bad?
Good question, Luke. That's Luke Skywalker from the Star Wars movies, for those of you who don't know. How do we tell the good questions from the not-so-good questions? Wouldn't it be great if someone came up with a system, a way of classifying questions so that we know which ones are better than others? Well, someone did come up with such a system, and his name is Arthur Costa. Arthur Costa is a name known to all avid students far and wide because the system of questioning is at the heart of what we do. He is responsible for developing a system of classifying questions known as Costa's levels of thinking and questioning. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So grab some Cornell notes and something to write with as we learn how to question our questions. The first thing you'll want to do is grab a set of Cornell notes like this one. We'll be using green Cornell notes in class, but you can use any color you like or have available. Make sure you head your paper in ink, name, class, and period at today's date. Then we get to the topic. The topic of these notes is Costa's levels of thinking and questioning. Make sure you write that at the top. The next thing we'll need is the essential question for this lesson. There are two essential questions you want to keep at the forefront of your mind. The first is, how do we ask better questions? The second is, what are the different levels of thinking and questioning?
So I'm going to pause the video here just for a second. Remember, you don't have to worry about taking Cornell notes unless you want to, but these two essential questions that the narrator just stated are going to be really helpful to keep in mind as the video plays. So you want to consider, well, how can I ask better questions? And then you also want to be thinking about what are the different levels of thinking and questioning. And that's what this video is going to address next.
Through the course of this exercise, we will learn the answers to these and other important questions. Because after all, what's a question without an answer? Let's begin by talking about who's responsible for the system in the first place. This is Arthur Costa. Arthur Costa is an educator who has written several books about how to teach and learn. Through the course of his studies, he's identified three distinct levels of questions that affect teaching and learning, and they're known as Costa's levels of thinking and questioning. These three levels help students and teachers ask better, more meaningful questions. And of course, the better your questions, the more you're going to learn. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear from the horse's mouth.
Okay, so we're going to fast forward through the interview with Mr. Costa. He's a nice guy and he's super smart, but I'm not really sure that the interview would be meaningful for you. So we are backing it up here, and here we go, pick up the video again.
We're now ready to explain the 3 levels that Costa identified. Level 1 is gathering, meaning that the learner is instructed to go and find something. Level 2 is processing, meaning that the learner must put some thought in order to achieve a task. And level 3 is applying, meaning that the learner must take what he or she has learned and apply it to a different, more complex situation. These 3 levels relate to the degree of complexity of the different types of tasks. In other words, the higher the level, the more thinking that is needed for the learner to complete the task. Level 1 tasks tend to be very simple. They involve very little complex thought. Level 2 tasks are more difficult and involve more thinking. And level 3 tasks are the most rigorous and challenging activities you can engage in. As you might imagine, the more you are working and thinking, the more you're going to learn. Often you'll find that people turn these levels into a visual of a house by using rectangles for the levels and placing a triangle at the top. In that visual, the first level is at the bottom and we work our way up to the top. And there's a good reason for that. The reason why we use a house to represent these levels is because each of these levels supports one another. Even though level 1 is at the lowest level and involves least thinking, this doesn't mean that level 1 questions and tasks are not important. On the contrary, level 1 questions are important because they help support those other 2 levels. If we had a house and we took out the bottom level, what do you think would happen? You guessed it, everything else would fall apart. We need level 1 questions to support these level 2 questions, and we need both level 1 and 2 questions to support level 3. This house shows us that all 3 levels have to work together in order to get the most out of our question. Let's look at these levels a bit more closely. Level 1 tasks are input tasks. These are tasks that are easy and involve very little thinking. They might include things like gathering information or book questions and memorization. In this case, the information is either known or can be found easily in a book or on a website. Level 2 tasks are a bit more involved. They involve processing. They involve thinking about the information that you gathered in level 1. Level 3 is an output level. This means that you're going to take the information that you've gathered and thought about and create something. You're going to apply the information to a new situation and make judgments about what you've learned. Let's see what this might look like in a typical classroom, say a history classroom. A level 1 question that your history teacher might ask you is, who was the first president of the United States? Or who was the 16th president of the United States? These questions are fairly basic and can be answered very quickly. The information is probably already inside your brain, and if it isn't, you can put it there by reading a book or visiting a website. But the questions involve very little complex thought. A level 2 question is a bit more involved. You might see a question like, how are Lincoln and Washington similar and how are they different? This question involves a bit more time, effort, and thought to respond, and you need the information you obtained in level 1 to be able to answer the question. The level 3 task is the most involved and would probably look something like this. Who was the better president and why did you choose him? This question requires you to come up with something new, your own opinion. And it requires you to use the information you acquired in levels 1 and 2. This question would take the longest to answer and involve the most thought. The important thing to keep in mind is that level 1, 2, and 3 questions are not always questions. What I mean by that is, teachers can sometimes instruct you to do something using a sense that doesn't necessarily end in a question mark. For example, solve for X or define photosynthesis. These will be questions that don't read as questions. And in these cases, we would refer to the statements as tasks, not questions. But the levels would still be the same. What gives the task its level is the verbs that the teachers use. You can use a handout like this one to help you determine which verb fits into which level. Find the verb, and you can tell what level the question is. Now it's your turn.
So this is the end of the video that we need to watch. You should contact your teacher about getting your own copy of Costa's Questioning Levels handout, and we will be using it throughout the school year to help us be able to work on those questioning skills. Thanks so much for watching.